You are falling 33,000 feet above the earth in the broken tail section of a commercial airplane, spinning through air so cold it would kill you in minutes. The year is 1972. You are 22 years old. You are a flight attendant on a routine flight from Copenhagen to Belgrade, and right now you should already be dead. An explosion just ripped through the fuselage of Yugoslav Airlines Flight 367, a McDonnell Douglas DC-9 carrying 28 passengers and crew. The plane has torn itself apart in the sky above Czechoslovakia. Fragments of wings, luggage, seats, and bodies are scattering across miles of frozen countryside. But you are strapped into a section of the tail, a metal shell roughly the size of a small room, falling face first through clouds and darkness and freezing air at over 100 miles per hour. What happens to your body at this altitude? You lose consciousness almost immediately. At 33,000 feet, the air pressure is so low that your lungs cannot extract enough oxygen to keep your brain functioning. This is called hypoxia, a term that simply means your cells are starving for air. Your brain starts shutting down in seconds. The temperature outside is roughly minus 50 degrees Celsius, cold enough to freeze exposed skin in under a minute. Your blood vessels constrict to protect your core. Your heart rate spikes, then drops. You pass out before you even understand what has happened. You don't feel the fall. You can't. You are unconscious, tumbling inside wreckage, your body limp and folded against broken metal and torn carpet and shifting luggage. The official report, later compiled by Czech aviation authorities, recorded the structural breakup at 33,330 feet. That is over 6 miles straight down. The fall from breakup to impact takes roughly 3 minutes. 3 minutes of free fall through the darkness of a January evening, with nothing beneath you but frozen earth. But here is what nobody expects. Not the investigators, not the doctors, not the rescue team searching the snow-covered mountainside near the village of Srbska Kamenice in northern Czechoslovakia. They don't expect to find anyone alive. The tail section hits the forested slope of a mountain at terminal velocity, roughly 120 miles per hour for a human body in free fall. But you are not a body in free fall. You are inside wreckage, and wreckage behaves differently. The metal shell crumples on impact, absorbing enormous amounts of energy. The snow on the slope is deep, January 1972, the worst winter in years. Beneath the snow, dense pine trees bend and break, acting like a net. Each layer of resistance, snow, branches, earth, extends the time it takes for the wreckage to come to a complete stop. This is the principle that engineers call deceleration. The longer the stopping time, the lower the peak force on the human body inside. A 1-second stop versus a 1 millisecond stop can mean the difference between a broken back and a disintegrated one. It is not gentle. Nothing about a fall from 6 miles is gentle, but it is enough. A local woodsman named Bruno Honk is walking through the forest when he hears the impact. The sound is enormous, a crash that echoes through the valley. He scrambles through knee-deep snow toward the source and finds the wreckage scattered across the hillside. Most of it is unrecognizable, twisted metal, shredded seats, personal belongings everywhere. The smell of aviation fuel mixes with pine sap in the freezing air. There should be no survivors. There cannot be survivors. But then he hears something, a sound from inside the tail section, a low moan. He finds a young woman still strapped into her crew seat, buried under debris and snow. Her skull is fractured. Both legs are broken in multiple places. 3 vertebrae in her lower spine are shattered. Her pelvis is cracked in 2. Several ribs are snapped. She is bleeding from her head. She is barely alive. Bruno Honk does something that saves her life. He does not move her. He does not try to pull her from the wreckage. He takes off his coat and covers her. He keeps her warm. He talks to her, though she cannot hear him. He stays with her until the ambulance arrives almost an hour later. This is the first link in the survival chain. There will be more. When Vesna Vulovic arrived at the hospital in Česká Lípa, she was in a coma. Her body temperature had dropped dangerously low, a condition called hypothermia, which paradoxically may have helped her survive by slowing her metabolism and reducing the amount of oxygen her brain needed. Dr. Rasim Jusufovic, the lead surgeon who treated her, later told reporters that her survival was the most medically inexplicable case he had ever encountered. The injuries were catastrophic, but her heart was still beating. Her brain, though swollen, was still functioning at the most basic level. She remained in a coma for 27 days. 27 days in which her body fought infections, stabilized fractures, and slowly began to knit itself back together. When she finally woke up, the first thing she asked for was a cigarette. Her memory of the flight was gone, a complete blank from the moment of the explosion to the moment she opened her eyes in a Czech hospital room. The official investigation determined that a bomb had detonated in the baggage compartment of the DC-9. Croatian nationalist extremists had planted the device. The explosion caused rapid decompression, meaning the air pressure inside the cabin dropped so violently that the fuselage could not hold together. The plane broke into 3 sections midair. All 28 people on board were presumed dead in the initial hours after the crash. But Vulovic survived. Not only did she survive, she made a near-full recovery. She walked with a limp for the rest of her life. She suffered chronic back pain. But she returned to work at Yugoslav Airlines, though she was never assigned to fly again. She became a national hero in Yugoslavia, a symbol of impossible resilience. Guinness World Records officially certified her fall as the highest survived without a parachute, 33,330 feet. That record stands unbroken over 50 years later. Then, in 2009, the story fractured. A team of investigative journalists published a re-examination of the case in a German magazine. They presented Czech military radar data suggesting the aircraft may not have been at 33,000 feet when it broke apart. Their data indicated a much lower altitude, possibly between 2,000 and 3,000 feet. If the plane had descended through cloud cover before disintegrating, Vulovic's survival, while still remarkable, would follow far more conventional physics. The debate remains unresolved. Czech authorities maintain their original finding. Vulovic herself rejected the revision publicly until her death in 2016. She insisted the record was hers, not because she was proud of it, but because it meant something. It meant the body is capable of things the mind cannot explain and the laws of physics should not allow. But the real question is not how high she fell. The real question is why some people survive things that should kill them instantly, and why others die from injuries that seem minor by comparison. Trauma researchers call it the survival chain, the idea that every unlikely survival depends not on one miracle, but on a sequence of factors, each one on its own insufficient but linked together, creating a narrow window where life persists. For Vulovic, the chain was this: unconsciousness prevented shock-induced cardiac arrest. The tail section remained partially intact around her seat. The snow was deep. The trees were dense. Bruno Honk found her within minutes. The hospital was close enough. The surgeon was skilled enough. Her body temperature had dropped low enough to slow her metabolism without killing her outright. Remove any single link and the chain breaks. Remove any two and there is no story to tell. In 2017, a study published in the journal Injury by researchers at the University of New South Wales examined 137 documented freefall survivors worldwide. They found that 87% of survivors shared 3 common factors: a compressible landing surface, enclosure within a partially intact structure, and receiving medical aid within 1 hour of impact. The height of the fall, paradoxically, was almost statistically irrelevant once terminal velocity had been reached. After roughly 1,500 feet of free fall, a human body reaches its maximum speed. Falling from 10,000 feet or 30,000 feet produces nearly identical impact forces. The only variable that changes is how long you spend in the air before you stop. That is the part nobody tells you about falling. Gravity is not the killer. The sudden stop is. And here is the counterintuitive truth that Vulovic's story reveals. The worst moment, the fall itself, is not what determines your fate. Every expert who has studied high-altitude falls says the same thing. It is not about being tough. It is not about being lucky. It is about the exact conditions of your landing and what happens in the 60 seconds after you hit the ground. Think about that the next time your own life feels like it is in free fall. The descent is terrifying. The speed is disorienting. You lose control. You lose your sense of direction. You lose consciousness of what is above and what is below. But the moment that determines whether you survive is none of those moments. It is the last one, the landing, what you land on. Whether the ground gives way beneath you or breaks every bone in your body on contact. Whether someone is standing nearby with a coat and the patience to stay. Vesna Vulovic fell 6 miles through the frozen dark and lived to tell about it, even though she could never remember the telling. Her story is not a story about falling. It is a story about what you land on and who finds you when you stop. You are falling, but falling is not the end. What comes after the fall, that is where everything begins again.